The following program is brought to you in living color on NBC.
Nearly everything that has been written about the Chicano portrays him as a docile, meek, servile, submissive individual in contrast to the all-American type. Even the clear-thinking Chicano leaders speak of the awakening of the sleeping giant. One of the leaders in the Chicano movement says, quote, "We start to move," unquote, implying that we've been standing still. History tells us something different. The period from 1848 to 1930, almost 100 years, indicates that this giant of the Southwest was awake and in conflict with the Anglo-American, the newcomer, the intruder. The Chicano resisted in many ways. This program will document the conflict between the Mexicano and the Anglo-American, highlighting the Mexicano struggle for determination. Guest narrator for this program is Mr. Carlos Arce, assistant professor and chairman, Chicano Studies Department, San Fernando Valley State College, Northridge, California.
Prior to the war between Mexico and the United States in the mid-1840s, with the exception of Texas, there had been relatively little conflict between the Anglo and the Mexican. In California and New Mexico, the immigrant Anglo, French, German, British superficially assimilated, Hispanicized his name, learned Spanish, became a Catholic, married into the society, and generally paid homage to the Republic of Mexico. This attitude was advisable since the foreign Anglo-American was an immigrant minority in Northwest Mexico and acted more or less like most minorities. However, the United States precipitated a war with Mexico. As a result, half of Mexico's territory was taken by the United States under terms of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo of 1848. The United States incorporated the area comprising the states of New Mexico, Arizona, California, and part of Colorado, Nevada, Utah, among others. More important, the treaty made thousands of Mexicans citizens of the United States, subjecting them to the whim of the later citizens and outright and blatant open discrimination. In the years that followed the war, the Mexicans became a minority in Texas and other territories of the new Southwest USA. The process of Anglo migration had begun in the 1820s. In California, the 1848 gold rush brought a flood of foreigners, relegating the Mexican to second-class status. The same occurred in Colorado with the discovery of mineral riches in 1859. Only in New Mexico and Arizona did the Mexican constitute a majority. Nevertheless, they found little consolation in this. The political power rested with the Anglo minority. The arrival of large numbers of Anglo-Americans left little hope of assimilation between the two peoples. The Anglo-Americans benefited from the pioneering efforts of the Mexicans in the fields of cattle and sheep raising, agriculture, mining, laws, and architecture. They considered the culture of the Mexican inferior. Anglo-Americans coming into contact with Mexicans were very critical of them. John Russell Bartlett, a boundary commissioner, wrote about the Mexican, quote, "Mexican indolence cannot stand by the side of the energy and industry of the Americans and Europeans, and the newcomers are rapidly elbowing the old settlers to one side. Some few of the Mexicans have the good sense to fall in with the spirit of progress, but the great majority draws back before it and live upon the outskirts of the town in the primitive style of their forefathers," unquote. Bartlett was not alone in his lack of understanding of the Mexican's heritage. A large number of literary documents exist documenting the contempt that the Anglo held for the greaser, a term used to belittle the Mexican. Cecil Robinson's with the Ears of Strangers, catalogs this negative portrayal of the Mexicano in American literature. Other examples of this prejudice towards Mexicanos are the action of the California legislature of 1850, which passed the foreign miners tax law, which required foreign-born miners, principally Mexicanos, to pay $20 per month for permission to mine. The author of this law, State Senator Thomas Jefferson Green, was a well-known hater of Mexicans. He participated in filibustering the Tax Act through the legislature. The Miners' Tax Act became an excuse to take the Mexicanos' mines and legitimize acts of violence against him. The many lynchings occurring in California included the lynching of a pregnant Mexican woman in July of 1851. This pattern was repeated throughout the New Southwest USA. At the same time, the Mexicano's land was being taken from him. Land titles were invalidated, or he was harassed, or worn down to the point where he lost his land. Leonard Pitt, in his book, The Decline of the Californios, describes the alienation of the Mexicano from his land and the mainstream of society. Mexicanos did not stand idly by. Many expressed their displeasure. The newspaper El Clamor Público, the public outcry, was published in Los Angeles in the 1850s by Francisco Ramirez. Ramirez was not a seasoned politician. He was a mere youth, only 20 years old when he founded the newspaper. He used the pen to condemn the injustices of the gringo. In 1856, he wrote, quote, "Mexicans alone have been sacrificed on the gibbet and launched into eternity. This is the liberty and equality of our adopted land," unquote. Ramirez editorialized on the conditions of his fellow Mexicanos. He justly attacked the Anglo newcomers who by then had subjugated the Mexican, relegating him to second-class citizenship. Ramirez publicly exposed California's injustices, writing about attacks on Mexican and Chilean miners, about lynchings, about the legal stumbling blocks that Mexicanos encountered in the courts. In the state legislature, Ramirez crusaded for his people. Other California Spanish-language newspapers, El Eco del Pacífico, La Crónica, La Estrella, and others, dealt with the numerous difficulties that Chicanos faced under the Anglo-dominated society. In New Mexico, Father Antonio José Martínez published El Crepúsculo. He also commented on the injustices imposed on the Hispanos of New Mexico. Texas of mid-century also had a multitude of Spanish-language publications. All of them complained about the cultural conflicts between the dominant majority, the Anglo-American, and the Mexican minority. The resistance of the Mexicans was not always peaceful. Many Mexicans took to guerrilla-type activity and banditry to resist the overt racism of the Anglo newcomers. History has not properly dealt with the sources that caused many Mexicans to take arms, go into the hills, become the stereotype bandits that history invented. Although it is difficult to separate legend from history, it is probable that individuals such as Tiburcio Vázquez became so-called bandits in reaction to the injustices that they personally faced at the hands of Anglo-Americans. In fact, Vázquez explained his turning bandit by stating, quote, "My career grew out of the circumstances by which I was surrounded. As I grew to manhood, I was in the habit of attending balls and parties given by the native Californians, into which the Americans, then beginning to become numerous, would force themselves and shove the native-born men aside, monopolizing the dance and the women." This was about 1852. A spirit of hatred and revenge took possession of me. I had numerous fights in defense of what I believed to be my rights and those of my countrymen. The officers were continually in pursuit of me. I believe we were unjustly and wrongfully deprived of the social rights that belonged to unquote. Anglo-American writers have ignored this explanation, or that he operated as a bandit for 15 years, receiving aid of the people, who through Vázquez got back at their gringo oppressors. For many Mexicanos, it was better a bandido dying on his feet than a greaser living on his knees. Probably the best-known Chicano resistor was Juan Cortina, the Red Robber of the Rio Grande. He began his resistance in 1859. He came from an affluent family around the Brownsville area who turned to resistance after he killed an Anglo lawman who was abusing one of his mother's servants. For over 15 years, he rallied the Mexicano and fought both gringos and Mexican despots. His saga is explained in a Corrido, a Mexican ballad originating in the Rio Grande Valley of Texas. From these ballads, we know much about the heroes of the Mexican resistance. Here is Beto Ruiz, a professor at San Fernando Valley State College, to sing two corridos. The first is about Gregorio Cortés, who fought off los Rinches, the hated Texas Rangers, at the beginning of the 20th century. The second is el corrido de Río Arriba.
En el condado de Carnes, a qué desgracia ha sucedido, murió el cheripe mayor, quedando Román herido. Otro día por la mañana, cuando la gente llegó, unos a los otros dicen, no saben quién lo mató. Anduvieron informando y como 3 horas después supieron que el malhechor era Gregorio Cortés. Insortaron a Cortés por toditito el estado, vivo o muerto que se aprenda, porque a varios han matado. Andaban los americanos que por el viento volaban, era que querían ganar 3,000 pesos que les daban. Decía Gregorio Cortés con su arma aún encendida, no siento haberlo matado, lo que siento es a mi hermano. Venían los perros jaunes, venían tras de su huella, pero alcanzar a Cortés era alcanzar una estrella. Siguió con rumbo al Laredo sin ninguna timidez. Síganme rinches cobardes, yo soy Gregorio Cortés. Siguió con rumbo al Laredo, varios cheripes lo vieron, no lo quisieron prender porque le tuvieron miedo. Allá por el Encinal lo alcanzaron a rodear, poquitos más de 300, ahí les brincó el corral. Allá por los matorrales y según a lo que dicen, se agarraron a balazos y ahí mató otro cheripe. Decían los americanos, y ahora ¿cómo le haremos si le entramos por derecho? Muy poquitos volveremos. Decía Gregorio Cortés con su pistola en la mano, no corran rinches cobardes ante un solo mexicano. Gregorio le dice a Juan en el rancho del Ciprés, platícame que hay de nuevo, yo soy Gregorio Cortés. Gregorio le dice a Juan, ahora lo vas a ver, anda dile a los cheripes que me vengan a prender. Luego llegan los cheripes, Gregorio se presentó, por la buena sí me llevan, porque de otro modo no. Se llevaron a Cortés y terminó la cuestión, la pobre de la familia lo lleva en el corazón. año de 65, junio de fuego en el día, hubo una revolución allá por Tierra María, en una casa de corte, pueblo de Tierra María, Nuevo México el estado, condado de Río Arriba. Un grupo de nuestra raza, muy descontentos bajaron, y a oficiales del estado su venganza y los tomaron. Su jefe les suplicaba, no debe de haber violencia, pero no los controlaba, pues perdieron la paciencia. Un diputado en el suelo se queja con agonía, con una bala en el pecho, allá por Tierra María. Las mujeres y los niños iban corriendo y llorando, y en ese instante pensaron que el mundo se iba acabando. Fueron 30 que lograron para la sierra escapar, y el gobernador llamó a la Guardia Nacional. Cuando fueron capturados, a la prisión los llevaron para que fueran juzgados del crimen que se acusaba. Este corrido termina cuando se haga la justicia, para que no se repite lo de allá en Tierra María.
The themes of the corrido are many: catastrophes, murders, lynchings, love affairs, or any happening. The lyrics, spontaneous and improvised, are characterized by an ardent expression of feeling, social comment, and satire, relating those incidents that seriously affect the emotions of the people. The corridistas of the lower Rio Grande, in their travels about the countryside, personally witnessed the innumerable conflicts between Anglo-Americans and Mexicans. As good reporters will, they related the happenings as they saw them, spreading the news with their corridos. The banded corridos of the border relate the clashes between Mexicans and Anglos, especially about Los Rinches, the Texas Rangers. They document that the Mexicano was never docile. The corrido, even today, links the past with the present. Corridos still tell about the resistance. A recent protest song is Cubo Raza. Beto Ruiz will sing this song, which has its roots in the Chicano resistance movement of the 19th century, and also a corrido about Cesar Chavez.
Bueno, pues que hubo y cómo le va y qué lindo día para cantar noticias que han llegado de Nuevo México. Todas estas tierras fueron perdidas y al presente nos encontramos rogándole al gobierno. Reyes, López, Tijerina, de Nuevo México, ha levantado armas, sus tierras reclamó. Hombre, qué mentirosos cuando firmaron el tratado los americanos. El mexicano serse gringo no puede ni quiere, el mexicano serse gringo no puede ni será, porque en sus venas trae la sangre chichimeca, zapoteca y de los yaquis, xochimilca y de los mayas. Y por su cuerpo trae la sangre de Cuauhtémoc, de Morelos y Zapata y el famoso Pancho Villa. Texas y Utah y California, Wyoming y Colorado, Nevada, Nuevo México, todas estas tierras fueron perdidas. Y al presente nos encontramos rogándole al gobierno. Reyes, López, Tijerina, de Nuevo México, ha levantado armas, sus tierras reclamó. Ahí está, y aquí nos tienen, nuestra cultura aplastada y hablando inglés. El mexicano serse gringo no puede ni quiere, el mexicano serse gringo no puede ni será, porque en sus venas trae la sangre chichimeca, zapoteca y de los yaquis, xochimilca y de los mayas. Y por su cuerpo trae la sangre de Cuauhtémoc, de Morelos y Zapata y el famoso Pancho Villa. Un día 7 de marzo, jueves santo en la mañana, salió César de Delano componiendo una campaña. Compañeros campesinos, esto va a ser un ejemplo, esta marcha la llevamos hasta mero Sacramento. Cuando llegamos a Fresno, toda la gente gritaba, y que viva César Chávez y la gente que él llevaba. Nos despedimos de Fresno, nos despedimos con fe, para llegar muy contentos hasta el pueblo de Merced. Vamos llegando hasta Ogden, ya mero la luz se fue, pero mi gente gritaba, sigan con bastante fe. Cuando llegamos hasta Ogden, los mariachis nos cantaban, y que viva César Chávez y la Virgen que él llevaba. Contratistas esquiroles, esto va a ser un ejemplo, ustedes van al infierno, nosotros a la gloria. Ese señor César Chávez, él es un hombre cabal, quiere verse cara a cara con el gobernador Brown. Oiga, señor César Chávez, su nombre que se pronuncia, en su pecho usted merece la Virgen de Guadalupe.
The chronicles of Southwest USA are filled with stories of injustices the Mexicanos suffered and still experiences. Many reported in newspapers carry bold headlines, and others perhaps no more than filler items in back pages of newspapers, at times not even chronicled.
Thank you, Mr. Arce and Mr. Reese. This program, fourth in the series, has been the bridge between historical and contemporary periods of Chicano history. From here on, we will present topics on contemporary issues that constitute serious problems to Chicanos today. Of the bundle of issues confronting both the Anglo-American and the Mexican-American, language appears to be an insurmountable problem of importance and concern. The basis for this contention lies in the area of bilingual schools, that is, the school and the community and the school. The impact on the psyche of the Chicano child creates a strong negative self-image due to the constant emphasis by Anglo teachers on the handicap that Spanish is supposed to be. This attitude on the part of the school administrators and teachers has done nothing but foster a serious illiteracy in both languages, contributing to continuing socioeconomic problems, called the Mexican-American problem. These are related to his culture and heritage. The Chicano is in a kind of limbo, neither accepted nor rejected. He finds himself in the continuities and parallels of the past, surrounded by the romantic misinformation of his culture, the myths and misconceptions of his heritage. Until the Anglo-American accepts the, quote, Mexican-American problem as part of the Americanization process, that is, man is the culture and the culture is man, and he forbears the American nativism, then the delicate problem of acceptance may be solved with mutual understanding and justice for all minorities, the non-white, the non-Anglo-Saxon. The next program will be a first with contemporary theme, labor, the agricultural migrant worker. The guest narrator will be the noted historian and authority on labor problems, Dr. Ernesto Galarza.